So the final Springboks team of the pool stages is named. Lots of interesting stuff to get into. The return of Handre Pollard, but I'm going to explain why that is not the most interesting part of this squad selection. That's what I'm getting into in this video. The Springbok team to play Tonga. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you make of it. What you make of the return of Pollard, the 5-3 bench split, everything else that I touch upon in the video. Also, like the video, subscribe to the channel. But let's get into it. So I am going to come on to Handre Pollard in just a second. Understandably, that will be the headline for a lot of people. It's the selection that realistically we all expected. South Africa expected to beat Tonga. Handre Pollard has come back into the team and he needs game time. If he is going to play a part in the knockout stages of the World Cup, then he needs to play and he needs to play now. So it's no surprise to see him come back in. And that's why actually I think the biggest part of this team selection, the most interesting part of this team selection, arguably, is Deon Fourie at hooker and then Marco van Staden on the bench. No specialist recognised hooker in the Springbok team. Now, again, to a degree, it makes sense. Bongi Mbonambi is having to shoulder a huge amount of the load in that area. He played a key part in the game against Ireland, an absolutely bruising contest. So, again, it does kind of make sense for him to be rotated. But the reason I think that's so important is because after this game, that quarter-final, presuming there's not a huge shock and Scotland do something against Ireland, which or they fail to pick up a bonus point against Tonga and qualification from the pool gets a little bit tricky. Presuming the Springboks get through, coming to the quarter-final stage, that hooker position, that's going to be incredibly interesting. I think Bongi Mbonambi is absolutely brilliant, but with him as the only specialised hooker in the team, how Deon Fourie, how Marco van Staden go in that role as understudy could be absolutely crucial depending on when they are thrown into the action in a quarter-final, in a semi-final if they get that far. That is something that I think is very, very interesting. Now, I know that Fourie has kind of played there before. We saw him play there against Romania. Van Staden has been a hooker option for the Boks for a while as well. But both of those guys now shouldering that responsibility in the team, I think that is as interesting from a Springbok perspective as how Handre Pollard gets on, in my opinion. You can let me know if you disagree, but I just think it's such a specialist position. It's so key, particularly when we get to a quarter-final. Having a reliable line-out, which we know the Boks traditionally have, having that set piece that can be rock solid is crucial. So Deon Fourie, I'm keeping an eye on him. I think how he goes is going to be quite fascinating. Let's get on to Handre Pollard, though. I know that's going to be the selection that a lot of people are most excited about. Jacques Nienaber has said he doesn't expect Pollard to get through a full 80 minutes. It's his first game for the Springboks in 13 months. He hasn't played kind of top-level club rugby since May. He came off the bench for Leicester Tigers the other week in the Premiership Cup, which is basically pre-season, essentially, for the clubs in England. So he hasn't played much rugby. So what kind of form is he in? How can he slot back into this Springbok team? Because let's not forget, this is a South African team that have developed quite a lot in that 13 months. The way in which they attack is different. And I know Handre Pollard is a World Cup winning fly half. He was absolutely key in 2019 for the Boks. He's a top quality player, but you do kind of sense that it's a team that has moved on to a degree. And then obviously the thing that everyone will be keeping an eye on is his goal kicking, because that is the big area that I think people favour him in place of Manie Libbok. But Handre Pollard back in, I think we'll probably see him play 50, 60 minutes if they can get it out of him. And then you'll have Manie Libbok coming off the bench, which brings me on to the bench because they've gone for a 5-3 split. Again, it's not something we see the Boks do too often, but Nienaber has said it's because Pollard, they just don't think they're going to get a full game out of him. It'd be a bit too risky to have less than those three backs replacements. So Libbok will come on. You've got Jaden Hendrikse and Jesse Kriel named there as well. So reverting to tradition for South Africa, not 7-1, not 6-2, but the 5-3, the old traditional bench split, which almost seems like a little bit of a throwback now. I know a lot of teams still do it, but for the Boks, it's not something we see too often. So Pollard, Libbok, how they move going forward, they've made the good point as well that it's not just going to be some kind of returning saviour from Handre Pollard that immediately fixes a number of issues. Jacques Nienaber actually pointed to the fact he's not as concerned about the goal kicking. He's more concerned about the fact that they got within a metre of the Ireland try line about 4 times in that game last weekend and weren't able to convert, which I thought was an interesting way of looking at it. It's probably trying to take some of the pressure off the goal kickers there, I think, because I don't think you can get away from the fact that 11 points left out there in those tight games is going to come back and cost you. But I thought it was an interesting point, maybe one that we haven't been focusing on quite as much. It wasn't just the missed kicks that let South Africa down. They also should have capitalised on some of the pressure that they had as well. Let's get into a few other little bits with the team news. I've mentioned the 5-3 bench split. As I say, that's because of Pollard. Vermeulen at flanker. I know we have seen him play at flanker for the Springboks before, but mainly he is a number 8. And I just think that's probably... I think it's probably to try and combat the size and physicality of the Tongans. So you've got him and Siya Kolisi there on the flanks. Jasper Wiese is still at number 8. They've lost Peter Steph du Toit, who was awesome against Ireland, I thought. He was sensational. I presume they're just resting him. So maybe you want another big body, someone with a huge amount of size and physicality to come onto your flank. So Vermeulen's there as well. What else? Grant Williams, once again, given the nod on the wing. Makazole Mapimpi comes back in. He was sensational against Romania. And I think I said in the previous video I did ahead of that Romania game, it was funny how Mapimpi's almost gone from being the first choice along with Kolbe to seeming like he's maybe in the rank just below. And I wonder with Arendse, Kurtley Arendse I don't think has done a huge amount at this World Cup so far. And so maybe Makazole Mapimpi can play his way back in. Was it Arendse that received the crossfield kick from Libbok against Scotland? Possibly was. But I don't think he's been quite as busy as Cheslin Kolbe has, for example. So I think maybe Mapimpi, there's an opportunity for him there to play his way back into the team, and they go back to Kolbe and Mapimpi on the wings. Le Roux comes back in at fullback, changing the centres as well. Esterhuizen, that big ball carrier at 12. Canan Moodie, we know what he can do at 13. But look, overall, it's a strong team. 3 players that are keeping their spots from the Ireland game in Etzebeth, Kolisi and Wiese, but a lot of those players were still involved in that matchday squad for Ireland. That was something Jacques Nienaber was quick to point out, saying that this is still a top quality side. They respect what Tonga can do, and Tonga are a little bit of a banana skin, so they need 5 points, South Africa, to get themselves qualified for the quarterfinals, and then they're going to have a 2-week break. That could be the perfect preparation for facing the French. We'll wait and see when we get there, but yeah, we're already kind of excited potentially about that matchup if they are able to get there. So drop a comment down below. Let me know what you make of this team selection. In particular, the hooker position. Do you agree with me that is the most interesting part of this team? I know we're all going to be focused on Pollard, but I think that's actually the area that is, yeah, for me, the most interesting in this game. But let me know what you make about Pollard, Libbok, that whole dynamic. It seems to be splitting Springbok fans at the moment. I actually think after this game, we'll have a better idea of whether Pollard is ready to come back in and face a quarter-final like a team against France in 2 or 3 weeks' time. It'll probably quite give us a decent indication of that. And everything else as well, where the Springboks are, licking their wounds after defeat to Ireland. As I've said in previous videos, though, I just feel like they're still capable of getting themselves to the final and possibly winning it. I think they've still got a good enough squad. If they can be a bit more clinical, improve that goal kicking, all of a sudden that result probably looks very, very different, and we're having a different conversation around them. So it's a game of fine margins. The Springboks still in a good position. They need a win this weekend. Drop a comment down below, like the video. Make sure you hit subscribe. I want to get to 10,000 as quickly as possible, ideally by the end of the World Cup, but if we can do that sooner, even better. So make sure you are subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one.